Well, after looking at the Tennessee game, it was obviously a very physical, tough, game that I think our guys played with a tremendous amount of effort, tremendous amount of toughness, really competed well in the game. It was a grind, had to overcome lots of adversity, some that we created for ourselves and some that they created with their great effort. But um, needless to say, we did the things that we needed to do to be effective and control the game at the end of the game. So now it's time to sort of move on to the next thing. And I think that at this time in the season, it's kind of like, you're running a 100-meter race and, you're getting down to about 70 meters and you got 30 meters to go. And a lot of people are close, chomping at right on your heels. And you got to be able to finish the race. And it's important that people continue to do the things that they need to do to prepare well, to improve, to play the way that we're capable of playing, to execute. And whatever your role is, whether it's covering a kick or being on the kickoff team or being a receiver, being a defensive back, playing nose guard, it really doesn't matter. So we had some guys that had some outstanding performances in the last game. Offensively, Amari Cooper, who was a freshman of the week in the league, and A.J. and Michael Williams did a really good job of blocking. Defensively, I think Dion Blue and D. Milner did a really good job of covering some really, really good skill guys. And Vinny had a really good game. So all three of those guys in special teams. Cyrus Jones, first time being on as a return guy, did some very positive things back there. And Nico Johnson and T.J. Yelding do a good job as core special teams guys. We really don't have any, we got a lot of guys that are, beat up a little bit. It was a very physical game, but we don't have anybody that is in question as to whether they'll be able to practice. Might have some guys that aren't full speed today, but I think we'll be okay by tomorrow and definitely by Wednesday. It's definitely good to get back and playing at home. It seems like it's been a long time since we played at home, and it's always good to be a part of homecoming. But we got a very challenging team this week, Mississippi State. Dan Mullen has done a fantastic job there. For them to be 7-0 and have won 9 straight games, I think speaks volumes of the great job that he's done from a program standpoint there. They have a very, very good offensive team, probably one of the best, most balanced offenses we faced all year. Tyler Russell has done a phenomenal job. They've got a really good runner. Chad Bumpus is a really, really explosive, good receiver who is a good run after the catch guy as well as has great speed. They lead the nation in turnovers margin, which is always big in winning, I think. And, defensively, they're one of the top, most difficult teams to score on in the country, ranked in the top 10. And they have 2 really good corners. They're physical up front. They play with a lot of toughness, and this is no doubt the best team that we've played to this point in the season.
Coach, could you there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks about AJ, who had his first 300-yard passing game against Tennessee, and could you just sort of talk about how you feel like he's progressed over the season and where he is as a
Well,
quarterback?
AJ, I think, has played very, very well for us. He hadn't turned the ball over. Makes a lot of good choices and decisions. Passing efficiency has been really good. I think, AJ has been a really good leader for us, affected, the other players on the team. And the last couple of weeks, I think we've really, come together a little better offensively in terms of consistency and balance. There's still a lot of things that we need to improve on. I've talked about it before. If you pass the ball, you got to protect. Route runners got to get open and catch the ball when they get open. And the quarterback's got to throw at the right place and at the right time. And he's been able to process information and get the ball where he's supposed to, for the most part, pretty efficiently and effectively.
Mississippi State's built their program a lot with a lot of good junior college players from Mississippi, and you have as well with a few players over the past few years. I mean, what is it about that system that makes these players ready for the SEC?
Well, we've had a guy or two, each year that's helped us, and I think that, first of all, you're getting a guy that's a little more mature, has played a little better level of competition. especially if you can get them to come at mid-year and they have a better chance to learn your system. And I think where you have a need, the most important thing about recruiting junior college guys to me is they want to go someplace where they can play. And if you have a need for them at that particular position, then it's good for them and it's good for you. And I think it can really, sort of complement the players that you have on your team.
Coach, after the game against Tennessee, you mentioned that you wanted your players to do a good job playing the next play, forgetting a bad play. Tennessee made some plays in the passing game, but they struggled to put together 2 or 3 in a row for a scoring drive. Just talk about the way your players were able to do that on defense.
Well, I think that, it's important that when you play against, good teams, period, whether they're really good offensive teams and have explosive players or, playing a really good defensive team who has a great pass rusher or whatever, their guys are going to make some plays. And, some of those things that Tennessee made plays on, we could have certainly executed a lot better, and are things that we need to correct and fix. But at the same time, I think when you're playing on the road and when you're competing against teams like Tennessee or like Mississippi State this week, you got to be able to play the next play. You got to forget about it and play the next play and try not to start to reel in terms of letting the momentum of the game get away from you in terms of your ability to execute. And I thought we did that, fairly well in the game. I think we gave up 4 big play passes and, did a pretty good job each time of trying to bounce back and play the next play.
Coach, I got 2 questions. First of all, just your ability to start games, your team, do you practice that? How do you explain the great starts from a half perspective?
Well, at times we started, really well in games. At times we've gone 3 and out on offense, and in the Michigan game, for example, and, then came back and, played extremely well. Defensively, last year, the first series of the game was usually the worst for us. This year we've, gotten off to a pretty good start, defensively. So I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason for it. We definitely try to prepare our players for what they're expected to see. I think one of the things last year that contributed to it was we always saw something different. There was something that we hadn't practiced against. This year we hadn't seen as much of that kind of stuff, so I think the players are a little more comfortable, starting the game relative to what they practiced, and that may have something to do with it.
Which goes into the next question. Your team seems to absorb what you're trying to tell them about avoiding upsets or game planning or whatever. Is this team special in that regard, do you think, and listening to you and absorbing it and doing what you want them to do?
I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if anybody's listening, but I know nobody listens to me at home, but here every now and then I get somebody to listen to me. This team has been pretty good from the standpoint of, we have a lot of good guys on this team. There are a lot of high character, high quality people who, want to do the right thing, and they're motivated to do the right thing. And I think that they're always sort of listening and learning on, how to try to do that. And they've responded, pretty much all year long the way we'd like for them to respond. And I think they've matured a little bit in that regard and learned from some circumstances where, maybe we didn't get it right the first time and something happened and it was a really learning opportunity for them, and they've always responded the right way.
Nick, AJ's getting a lot of recognition since Saturday as a possible Heisman Trophy candidate. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who'd be affected by that kind of hype. Does that concern you at all? And does it help? This is several years in a row now that you have had someone in that position.
Well, I think that, the most important thing that we try to get our players to understand, and AJ being included, in that is, the most important thing you do is how do you play? How do you execute? How do you play? That's one play at a time, every play in a game like it has a history and a life of its own. So You know, we're all for our guys getting recognition, and we're all, you know, we're pleased and flattered that, you know, some of our players are up for awards and have a chance, you know, to be recognized for their hard work and effort. But at the same time, I think they all need to understand that, you know, you've never really arrived in terms of, you know, what's happened in the past. You're only trying to build on so that you can improve in the future. And to keep your head in the right place relative to your preparation and what it takes for you to go out and play well. And everybody knows what that recipe is for them. You know, I mean, it's just like, you know, your mother makes a good cake. As long as she uses the same ingredients, I love that carrot cake. But if she changes the ingredients, cake don't taste the same. So same thing with players. And I think that's important regardless of what external factors are out there. You need to focus on what you need to do to play well in the game. And that's what we've tried to emphasize to all of our players, that don't get affected by what other people are saying, because the most important thing is continue to play well. You know, same things with guys that are, you know, can be high draft picks or whatever. You know, at the end of the day, the most important thing is, how did I play? So what do you need to do that?
Have you seen a pretty steady progress on this team? They've played okay defensively against you guys since you got here.
They always play tough against us. They don't play okay against us. They play good. I mean, we struggled as much against them last year as anybody we played against, and they got a good defensive team. They've got good players. They've got a good offensive team. They've got really good balance and good quarterback and throw the ball, and they're committed to running it and do a good job of running. I mean, their runner leads the league, I think, in rushing. So they're a good team all the way around.
Follow up, could you comment a little bit what you see on Perkins?
Well, they got a big offensive line. All right, they've got a really good scheme, you know, that they run the ball with, and lots of multiples in terms of how they present it to try to confuse the defensive players. But he's very quick, very instinctive as a runner, and does a really effective job of executing and running, you know, the plays that they have. And he's tough, you know, runs behind his pads, and hard guy to tackle.
Coach, how has this defense kind of exceeded your expectation in considering all the guys that were lost of last year's defense?
Well, you know, I can't really sit here and say that anybody exceeded anybody's expectations when they catch a 43-yard pass with a tight end running down the middle, or, you know, two guys running to each other and the guy catches a crossing route and runs down to the 7-yard line. I mean, we're trying to play every play in the game and do a good job of executing, put our players in the best position that we can. And, you know, I'm not disappointed in the way they played. They played extremely well all year. But I think there's a lot more challenges on the horizon for them. And I think we're going to have to continue to improve and play better if we're going to continue to have success on defense.
Coach, a couple of questions for me. First of all, Tyler Russell has been very efficient for them as well. Talk about what he brings to the table.
Well, Tyler Russell's a big, physical, athletic guy who has a really good arm, can throw the ball down the field. This year he's showing a lot of poise and his experience in getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and they're a much, much better passing team than a year ago when he just played, you know, sort of shared time and played some and started some, but you know, so there's not really anything that he doesn't do well, in my opinion. So he's very aware, very instinctive, and they've got a very good scheme in the passing game. You know, they can throw the ball vertically down the field, but they got a lot of short screens, bubbles, and they got some guys that can catch the ball and run with it on those plays as well, which complements the running game.
And secondly, I know you've had a policy here of not making true freshmen available to the media. I'm wondering, was there a particular incident earlier in your coaching career that led you to making that policy? And on the back half of that question, Has that helped make guys like Amari and Trent and Mark, help them make a smoother transition to college football?
Well, you know, I first of all, there were situations, and, you know, most of the stuff that we do, we learn from experience. You know, we didn't just say, okay, this is the best way to do it. And I guess I can tell you the story, and maybe I've told it before, but we were at Michigan State. Plexico Burris was a freshman, and I love Plexico, don't get me wrong. He was a great player for us and did a good job and all that. We're going to play Michigan at Michigan, which is the biggest game of the year, and I let freshmen talk to the media, and, you know, he's a freshman. And he says, yeah, going down there will be like taking candy from a baby. So, I mean, he just about got killed. They tried to kill him down there for 60 minutes in the game, and we didn't win the game. So I just said, you know, I think the reason is we do have a sort of public relations development program for our guys here. We started, you know, the first day of fall camp every year where we have an expert come in on, you know, how to get interviewed, how to answer questions, and, you know, Jeff works with our players in trying to get them ready to represent themselves, you know, positively when they do get the opportunity to you know, get interviewed, because that's ultimately what we'd like for them to do. We're not trying to hold them back from anything. We want to help them develop the skills necessary that they need to represent themselves in a first-class way and understand. And I think that it takes a little pressure off of them when they don't have to talk to the media because they worry about it, especially if they're not prepared for it. So might not be true in all cases, but I think in general it probably helps their development and takes a little pressure off of them. And I know that in some cases when you have a guy that has a lot of success as a freshman, you know, that the media would like to have the opportunity to talk to him. But I'm for protecting our players and helping them develop, and we eventually want that guy to be able to talk to the media and do a good job with it.